National Championship Reset continues here at the Voice of College Football. Let's get to work. This is a workshop that we all dive in together and review every season in the history of college football. Check out the live streams from the 2020s, the CFP era, the BCS era, back into the 1990s, and now the first full decade that we will attack that is strictly the poll era. So we are going to start with 1989, go through all the way to 1980 when the Georgia Bulldogs won a national championship. All right, leave those comments and questions there in the chat. If you choose to call in, we've left the link there in the live chat, and we have left the link also in the description section of the video. Please call with a comment or question or conversation concerning the year that we are discussing. All right, we'll start with 1989. Keep in mind, it's a natural segue. The book is Disputed National Champions. It's a look at the 1990s, not just about 1991, 94, 97, when we had what was or should have been a split national championship. No, it is about the entirety of the decade, showing why almost every national championship should be disputed. And of course, this is the most formative decade in the history of college football in regards to determining national champions in our sport that we love. And I not only present this as a history book, a historical reset of the 1990s, but take each and every season and put it into the future iterations of the BCS and the 4-team and the 12-team college football playoff. And it looks like we're going to 16 at some point when the Big Ten and the SEC can get together. Join us on our national show, the College Football Show, Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Let's get to 1989. And again, welcome in, everyone. We are going to do our best to get through the entire history of college football. We are at 2024. We've made it back through 1990. Let's get to 1989. So in 1989, Miami was the national champion as voted by the AP 38-19 over Notre Dame. Florida State got 2 votes, despite losing to Miami head-to-head on a missed kick. Of course, wide right, wide left, wide right, back and forth, back and forth. The coaches poll... Why we can't get that to move? What's going on there? The vote there was 36-7, and that was actually Miami over Florida State, with Notre Dame with 6 votes at number 3. This is pretty darn clear. Miami won the national championship because they beat Notre Dame head-to-head. That game was played at the Orange Bowl. It was 27-10. It wasn't that close. And so Miami took care of business against both Notre Dame and Florida State, the 2 best teams in the country other than themselves. Now, if we look at the 1989 Miami Hurricanes, who also defeated Nebraska in the... No, that was the year. That's right. They beat Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. That was an Alabama team that was undefeated at 10-0, then lost to Auburn, but still won the SEC, went to the Sugar Bowl. And Miami, they beat Nebraska in 88. Yes, and in 91 in the Sugar Bowl. Miami's loss in this particular season, so correct me here. The loss was to Florida State. Okay. So, wow, 1989 was the Miami loss to Florida State. They beat Florida State in key games in 87 and 88. So there's the Miami rundown right there. So I believe we've got a disputed national championship here for sure. Why the vote landed in the way that it did is beyond me. So look at this. Miami lost to Florida State. by 2 touchdowns. Okay. Keep in mind, Notre Dame also was a factor in this with a 12-1 record. That Notre Dame team beat Colorado in the Orange Bowl. So Florida State, their loss in 1989, well, they had 2 losses. So that eliminates Florida State. That's right. They got off to those 2 losses. And remember that Clemson game? Yeah, I remember that one. But that Southern Miss game, quarterbacked by Brett Favre, Florida State and Southern Miss, yes. Brett Favre introduced himself to the nation against Florida State. So that's our hang up there, is that although Florida State defeated Miami had just the 1 loss, but Notre Dame just had the 1 loss. Miami won that game by 17. We also had Colorado with 1 loss, Tennessee with 1 loss, and Notre Dame defeated Colorado. And then we've got Tennessee to look at. That Tennessee team, I believe, defeated Arkansas in the Cotton Bowl. Yes, they did, 31-27. Tennessee lost by 17. That Tennessee team lost by 17 to Bama. So this is kind of difficult when you really look at it, because we've got all these teams that lost 1 game. And just because Miami looked like the best team, should they have won an undisputed national championship all by themselves? Should they have? Tennessee defeated number 4 Auburn at the time of kickoff, number 4, and a number 10 Arkansas team. So they had 2 ranked wins at time of kickoff. And Auburn finished number 6, 10-2. They beat Ohio State in the Hall of Fame Bowl. And also beat an 8-4 Ole Miss team. This is a tough one to call, because Miami, and again, we are not determining here who the best team is. We're determining who earned a national championship. So I do believe that Miami was the best team, and those last 2 games were decisive wins against excellent teams in Notre Dame and Alabama. Prior to that, they lost to Florida State by 2 touchdowns, and they only defeated 1 ranked team at time of kickoff. That was Pitt, 24-3. And that Pitt team finished 8-3-1. So I see nothing differentiating why Tennessee should not have a share of a national championship. The only issue here is Tennessee lost to Alabama head-to-head. Therefore, Alabama won the SEC. So the 2 teams tie for first place in the SEC. And obviously, Bama won the Sugar Bowl bid because of the head-to-head win, but they did not just flat out win the SEC. And as Whoa Nelly College Football is letting us know, Notre Dame had a very tough schedule, beat unbeaten Colorado in the Orange Bowl. And that game was 21-6. General Ursus is letting us know that Tennessee was voted national champions by a lower tier poll. I forgot what poll it was now. Yeah, and I would love to only have 1 national championship per season, because that's the way it should be, but these teams didn't play. They didn't play a playoff. They didn't play a tournament. to determine one national champion. So even though there is just one national champion in the AP poll and sometimes two overall that we generally, the public, determines is the national champion based on the two major polls, that doesn't mean that's what is fair. And it appears in this particular season, it appears what is fair is that Miami, Notre Dame, Colorado, and Tennessee are the national champions. Or if you want to consider Miami, Notre Dame to be an elimination game and Notre Dame, Colorado to be an elimination game, then at least Tennessee, as the SEC co-champion, earned a national championship just as much as Miami did. So that's the way we want to be consistent year to year. And that's the way we've ruled it in the past, is that if we've got tiebreakers, head-to-head tiebreakers, then we utilize those. And so that eliminates Notre Dame and it eliminates Colorado. However, if we had some kind of round robin win-loss situation that we've had in the past, let's say Florida State only had one loss and they lost to Notre Dame, then we would have to group all of them together and award national championships because there was a round robin of wins and losses against these particular teams. However, since Miami won within the group and Florida State had two losses and Notre Dame won over Colorado, but they lost to Miami. Colorado lost within this group of one-loss teams, but Tennessee did not. We are going to award Miami and Tennessee national championships in 1989. Now, I believe 1988 is going to be clear-cut. General Ursus tells us that Tennessee was also voted national champions by a lower-tier poll in 1985, and that's the season that they defeated Miami by 4 touchdowns in the Sugar Bowl. Cobb and Webb, yes. Reggie Cobb and, Webb, the other running back. Can't think of his first name. Chuck Webb. Reggie Cobb, Chuck Webb. Absolutely. All right. Let's move to 1988. This should be a clean sweep. This one was pretty clear. What we had was, of course, Notre Dame defeated Miami in South Bend 31-30. Yes, controversy surrounds that game. However, I'm not going to make officiating calls because Miami also benefited at times during that game. One in particular, a touchdown in the corner of the end zone. Miami defeated Florida State. But Notre Dame is the national champion, of course. They are undefeated, defeating West Virginia in the Fiesta Bowl. And it would have been great to have seen a fully healthy Major Harris play the entire game. Yes, as Wonelli is letting us know. Yes, West Virginia with a healthy Major Harris. I don't know that they would have won the game. We'll never know. Nobody will know. We have no idea. But Notre Dame is the rightful national champion. It is a shame that Major Harris could not play the entire game from what I remember. All right. That was easy. 1987. This one is pretty easy as well, as Miami rolled Nebraska, 1987. No, it was Oklahoma in the Orange Bowl. So Oklahoma came in undefeated, huge matchup against Miami in the Orange Bowl. I believe that final score was 20-14, even though Oklahoma ran that fumble-rooski play. And Miami was the dominant team. They beat Florida State head-to-head in that 1987. Well, John, Notre Dame did win a national championship in 1993, and the last time they did anything, well, they just went to a national championship game. All right. So I would agree with you from like 1994 to 2023 in terms of doing anything major or elite or winning an elite game, but they sure proved themselves this past season. Notre Dame did, with an amazing season and run to the national championship game. And of course, they rightly won a national championship in 1993. All right. Yes. So 1987 is all Miami. And we're going to take a call here. We want to remind everyone, please call about the season that we are talking about right now. David, what's going on?
What's going on, Mark Rogers?
I am doing just fine.
Excellent. Finding you to keep some interesting hours for your podcast.
Oh, we do what we can.
Yeah, I know.
What can you say?
Yeah, you have an interesting schedule, but I digress. I enjoy it, and I certainly enjoy when you do your wrap up of. By the way, will you be reproducing a book of the 1980s as you did of the 1990s? I know you're going to try and make Chris Foote very, very happy.
Yes. Once we sell this one has to sell. Okay. We don't want to run in deficit mode forever.
Okay. In full disclosure,
yes.
My first year of watching college football was 1986. Okay. First full season of watching Ohio State. Obviously, Matt France is still seared in my mind, and I don't want to talk about that. And man, 2 kicks ruined me in 86. Rich Carlis still missed that field goal in the AFC Championship game. I will go to my grave saying that, by the way. You know, it definitely wasn't right down the middle. I will go there, by the way.
Yeah, I can't say that I have an opinion on that. I haven't really dissected it for as many times as I've seen it. I guess because I didn't care who won the game. It didn't matter to me. I didn't have a dog in the fight. So
I will say I watched 3 bowl games that year in 86. Obviously, Ohio State's beatdown of Texas A&M in the Cotton Bowl. They beat your old buddy Jackie Sherrill, who used to cover back in your SEC days. Kyler Murray's dad quarterbacked that team, I believe. And I believe they won the Southwestern Conference that year, and we beat them down in the Cotton Bowl. Great win for Coach Bruce. And R.I.P. Jim Carasados, who passed away. Spielman played great in that game, pick 6. It was a nice day. It was a good way to finish off the season, especially with the way the season ended, And obviously, I watched the Rose Bowl, first Rose Bowl I watched. And wouldn't you know, John Cooper found a way to beat scum that year, you know what I mean, with Arizona State, because Bo don't know roses. So his Rose Bowl futility continued. He always lost every Rose Bowl by a touchdown, didn't he, Mark? It always seemed like he lost every Rose Bowl by a touchdown.
He lost 8 of them.
Yeah, 2-8. Yeah,
he lost 8 of them, and yes, he only lost one of those games by double digits. Yes.
Yeah, but you go back and look at it. I think everything was like always a 1 touchdown game. Even the last one he was in 89 against Robo quarterback Todd Marinovich.
Yes,
and a really good USC team. Ricky Irvins and Junior Seau, RIP, were on that team. But I would say 86, though, the national championship game, Mark. That's what you'll talk about when it comes to the 86 season. Probably the greatest victory in the history of Penn State football, maybe, right, Mark?
Yeah, off the top of my head, I would go with that one. Yeah, it was preceded, obviously, by other undefeated seasons that didn't garnish as much respect from the pollsters because of a light eastern half of the country schedule of independence and only 2 national championships for Joe Paterno in 5 unbeaten seasons. And one of those championships, they lost a game by 3 touchdowns to Alabama. So this was his one undefeated season. So he is the face of the program all time. It's not even close. And that was his crowning achievement as a underdog of whatever the proportions were. I don't remember the point spread. It had to be about 14, something like that. And I was hoping they were going to pull that game out. I don't remember if I predicted it.
Yeah.
I have to go back into the archives, I guess, if I still have those archives, but I was predicting games even then. But I don't know if I pulled the trigger on that one.
Well, the thing about it is he had lost the but Paterno played for essentially 2 national championships. In 78, he loses on the goal line stand to the Bear. And then in 85, Oklahoma thumps him in the championship game. And then in 86, he gets back. And Vinny Testaverde picked a bad night to start throwing the ball to Penn State, by the way. Maybe that would be a precursor of things to come, by the way, for Vinny Testaverde in the NFL with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, 5 of those against Penn State. And the last one, I would love to see the play from the perspective that we get now from the games, from behind the quarterback, a little higher above the field, to see what in the world he was looking at when he threw that to, oh my goodness, the guy with the long last name.
Giftopoulos.
Yes. Yes.
Yep. Yeah.
And he threw 5 of those, and Shane Conlon had 1 or 2. And
yeah, they were a big underdog that night. I actually think a lot of people say if Miami would have won that game, Mark, think about it, that might have gone down as one of the all-time great college football teams, the 86 Miami team. Jimmy Johnson has always said that maybe was his best team while he was at Miami.
Well, Miami had a chance to win the national championship the previous season too, and they lost by 4 touchdowns in the Sugar Bowl after they had earlier beat Oklahoma. So the aforementioned Oklahoma thumping of Penn State was, of course, preceded by Oklahoma being thumped by Miami. So they could have won in 85, 86, 87, 88, 89.
Right.
I think they were the best team in college football in 1990.
Yeah, by the end of the year, they probably were. They lost that early game in the season to Ty Detmer and BYU. But yeah, that started his Heisman campaign that year. I would say that, 86, 87, by the way, they had Oklahoma's number for 3 years in a row, right? They beat him 85, 86, 87. Jimmy Johnson had the guy who took his job's number.
Yes. They won home and home. In the first matchup, you do recall who the starting quarterback was at Oklahoma.
Yeah, Aikman. Did that ever make sense to you? I always wanted to hear Barry Switzer talk about that. He's running the wishbone at Oklahoma, and he's got a pure drop back quarterback and Troy Aikman as his QB. That makes absolutely no sense to me, by the way, Mark.
I always thought that was strange too.
Yeah.
Once we got into the Troy Aikman era of UCLA and seeing what he became, which was the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. But as I understand it, and I've heard Troy Aikman talk about it, he was a little bit more fleet of foot than we give him credit for. And before he got banged up a little bit, but yeah, he was no Jamel Holloway with the pigskin in his hands on the perimeter ever. So yeah, that I found that strange too, that Switzer would make that decision and that Aikman would make that decision knowing he was going to throw 8 passes a game.
Yeah. It's amazing how close Miami was. You're right. 85, 86, 85 or 86, the Penn State game, but 87, they win it all. By the way, they were on the right side of the 2-point conversions were big for Miami in the 80s. 83, they were on the right side of a 2-point conversion when Osborne goes for 2 and doesn't get it. 87, Bobby Bowden was going to kick down in Tallahassee, and his players convinced him. He says, "Coach, we want to win." And they went for it. Now, that would have made a very interesting decision in 87. And then 88, they go for the 2 in Catholics versus convicts.
True.
Which is interesting.
Yeah. Fascinating.
It is. Yeah, some of the great college football games of the 80s, by the way. I do have to say, did you get to the controversial years? I take it of 82 and 83. And what's a bigger travesty?
We're going in reverse.
Oh, okay.
We're going backward through history.
Can I go there?
Sure.
May I go there? Okay. What is
I'm
a bigger
travesty? Comment yet, but go ahead.
I think a bigger travesty is Auburn in 83 versus SMU in 82.
Yeah, I'm going to get to all of that.
Okay. I'm sorry. Okay.
You can have your say, David. Anything else?
Well, no, I actually I didn't realize your order. My bad. I got in late here, Mark.
Oh, that's okay. Yes. Yeah. So we did the college football playoff era since 2014, and then we did the BCS. So we're going backwards.
Okay. I will say low key 88 Notre Dame. You mentioned 88 Notre Dame. Very impressive with what they did that year as far as schedule. You know what I mean? It had 4 real high quality wins when you go back and look at that season.
They did. Notre Dame was flat out impressive, period, from 1988 through like 93.
Well, the thing about it was they got a little lucky, though, Mark. Mike, I have to say, Scum had a really good chance to beat them the first game of the year. Mike Gillette missed a field goal, would have won it up there. And then the 2-point conversion, Catholics versus convicts. But then they got it rolling. They boat raced Rodney Pete's USC team out there in the Coliseum. I watched that game.
Yeah, that was a big game. That was a 1 versus 2 matchup.
And then they thumped, by the way, Major Harris in West Virginia in that Fiesta Bowl. Boy, Don Nehlen had a couple really good teams, but then they got to bowl games and they got exposed in 88 and 93.
Yeah, 93 is difficult for me to wrestle with concerning West Virginia because they should have been in a playoff or they should have been in the national championship game. Now, it's easy to say after the fact, well, they got killed by 5 touchdowns. They're not on the Nebraska, Florida State, Notre Dame level. And I completely understand and generally agree with that analysis. But in the moment, they should have had an opportunity to play for a national championship.
Yeah, I agree with you because that was like a controversy. Notre Dame, though, that was a bad loss to BC and Glenn Foley and Tom Coughlin the next week. Yeah, I mean, it was a 4 or 5 loss BC team.
9-3, number 13 in the country.
I thought they were 4 loss team. Okay, you got me on that one.
So yeah, people way over embellish on that loss. We got all sorts of national champions losing to 9-3 teams.
They did back it up with a good Cotton Bowl victory over Texas A&M. That was a solid Texas A&M team that R.C. Slocum had that year.
They should be the national champion of 1993.
You think it was just that soft spot for Bobby Bowden? I remember there was that campaign through the 93 season. It seems like, let's get Bobby Bowden a national title. You know what I mean? Kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Because at that point, nobody knew the future. Nobody ever does. So people, had a soft spot for Bobby Bowden. And what could be argued was it was a 1-score game.
Yeah. It was on their field.
It was on Notre Dame's field. But man, that Orange Bowl victory over Nebraska was less than sterling.
There was some debatable calls. You go back and watch that game, Mark. There was some debatable calls. I still think William Floyd fumbled on the goal line in that game.
That's a good one to bring up. And that team was a 17 or 18 point. Nebraska was obviously in the midst of being steamrolled by Florida State and Miami time and time again. For the past 7 or 8 years, and it was supposed to be that case again, and that just gave us a precursor to 1994. But Nebraska probably played the better game and, of course, missed a kick or, yeah, there was a soft spot for Bobby Bowden, just like Michigan fans would argue a soft spot for Tom Osborne, but that's a faulty argument that
Yeah.
I will shoot down against any Michigan fan who believes that Nebraska was gifted a national championship in 1997, which is about the most asinine argument in history.
Well, there's a couple soft spots for Tom Osborne because 94, everybody had a soft spot too, apparently, because Joe Paterno's on the wrong end of what he should have gotten. Probably his best team in 94 should have gotten a share at least.
Yeah, but that all depends on whether you think there's collusion in the sport, in the voting or not. I don't know. I couldn't answer that because if every man's just voting for himself and determining who do I think should be the national champion, I can only vote for one team, even though I think two deserve it. And both polls vote for Nebraska. That's one thing. Now, if everybody gets together and says, you know what, you guys vote for Nebraska, we'll vote for Penn State. You vote for Nebraska, we'll vote for Michigan.
Yeah.
Then that's the way it should have gone. But
hey, I got to ask you, 87, Mark. If McPherson beats Pat Dye's Auburn team in the Sugar Bowl, does he have a claim?
Sure, he does.
Okay.
Yes.
I was trying to wonder what Syracuse schedule looked like at 87, Mark. I don't think it was extremely impressive.
Well, that's what I was going to go to next.
Okay.
And when we brought up West Virginia of 1993, that's what many people would think would be lacking for West Virginia. But if you look at their schedule, it's actually comparable. It's not as strong as Notre Dame's schedule.
No.
But it's comparable to the other teams that played independent schedules that year. So West Virginia actually played a strong schedule in 93 to get to an undefeated season, including Miami and others. Yeah. But here's the so if we're just looking for ranked wins, we're not going to find them, or we're not going to find many. Now we'll have to see. What I was clamoring for a few weeks ago, David, was I would love to see a website that would not only have the ranking of the team at the time of kickoff, but also had the final ranking of that team. So we'd have to look that up. But as it stands right there, we've got a game against Penn State that they won by 27.
Yeah.
Now, that Penn State team in 1987...
It was a down team.
Yes, it was a down team. Number 10 at the time, but then they lost. So nobody ranked at time of kickoff. Now, who's up here? Did not play Florida State. That would have been nice to see. That would have validated something. Did they play any of these other teams? South Carolina, Pitt were 8-4 teams. Penn State finished 8-4, so they were decent.
Yeah, but still kind of an average. Yeah.
So they beat Pitt, who was 8-4. Maryland, Virginia Tech, Boston, any of those. Boston College was 5-6. Rutgers was 6-5. Yeah, they really would not have had a game to hang their hat on other than the Auburn win. Their best win would have been Pitt, Penn State, 8-4.
Yeah, and then Miami, you've got them beating the number 2 and number 3 teams in the country because they go to Tallahassee earlier that year, come back from – that was a great game. That's one of the first great college games. I remember that Miami-Florida State rivalry was 87. A lot of pros in that game. They basically beat the number 3 and number 2 teams in the country that year because they beat Oklahoma and they beat Florida State.
Yes. Yeah. So what we're trying to do here, David, and everybody else listening, is I'm not trying to claim who is the best team. So I'm not trying to make some determination that, well, all these factors and all these bullet points and comparisons are basically ties, but I think that so-and-so is the best team. Therefore, I'm going to award a national championship. No, I'm not making any kind of claims about who the best team is. I'm simply trying to award teams national championships if I believe that they earned it to some degree on the same level as the team that won basically were awarded the national championship. So you bring up a good point with the schedule, because the schedule becomes kind of tricky, because at some point, I'm not like matching the schedules, like your schedule has to be just as good as the other team's schedule,
Yeah.
but it's got to be in range. It can't be a group of 5 schedule. So all these group of 5s get eliminated from start to finish, except for, I'm looking at some years where the group of 5's undefeated and the national champions got a loss.
Mm-hmm.
And did that group of 5, did they prove it maybe in one regular season game and maybe one postseason game against top 5 type top competition?
Yeah. You think like would have been maybe that 2010 TCU team with Andy Dalton, who got a really solid win in the Rose Bowl that year over a legit top 5 to 10 Wisconsin team?
Yeah, but the only thing there is that Auburn went undefeated.
Well, that's true, but they were both undefeated. But
I'm saying I'm
yeah, Auburn
considering
did it
group of
against.
5s if there's a deficit there, if
Yeah.
they clearly have the better record and there's a loss from the national champion that's recognized.
By the way, your point about Miami, 89 through 90, 91, they share the national championship
Oh,
with
yeah. Then 91.
Washington. 92, they play for the national championship before they did get thumped by Bama. Your buddy Gene Stallings that year.
83 through 94.
Yeah.
They only had 2 seasons in which they were not in serious national championship contention.
Yeah.
So that's a 12-year run of 10 times being a serious national championship contender.
Yeah, and then they went downhill. Butch Davis had to pick up the pieces there in the 90s, and then rightfully so was able to build them back up again until Miami football went RIP in January of 2003, Marcus, I often say.
Yeah, that pretty much did it for them, and they're still trying to find some relevancy.
Boy, next to TTU Ed fans, if an Ohio State fan meets a Miami fan, by the way, Mark, that isn't exactly friendly either, by the way, I will say.
Yeah, I get that group over there fired up every so often. I stay clear of it. I try to, but at the same time, it gets brought up from time to time. And, of course, it was in their eyes robbed. They were robbed. And
somebody has made a great point. I mean, you can go back and dissect. I will talk about the Chris Gamble play every time they bring up that play.
Yes.
And I'm right to bring up the Chris Gamble play. But
yes.
So
I should have that clipped off and ready to roll every time.
By the way, there would be one if we could ever do again. There would be one for the books if we could do the replay on Mark Rogers. That would be
if Ohio State would ever win a poll here.
Well, a certain fan base is invaded they're like a cult over there, Mark.
They won the June watch party. They won the July watch party. Now they've won the August watch party.
Yeah. I was told at one time I was going to get to review the 2016 game. Me and John D were talking about getting together and doing that, and I'm still not opposed to that. So anytime they want to get together on 2016, JT,
I would like to, but Michigan fans continue to win these polls. So
JT got the first down game. I mean, I should say, right? Hey, last thing before I let you go, are you going to do like a before the season? I know you had Phil Steele on, but like a your own season preview where you pick the conference winners and pick your 12 playoff teams and national champion.
Couldn't I? I wasn't going to do it quite like that, which that's the way I've done it in the past, and that's kind of the traditional way to do it. What I thought we would do is have a big live stream that would probably take, I don't know, all night, but go through the entire season, start with week 0 and pick every game for each week and then just see where that lands.
Okay.
Like obviously I can't take a poll on every game and have the community vote on each game, because then we would be here for days on end. Sure. But I'll pick every game and then we'll just see where it lands when it's all said and done.
Okay.
Like we'll get to the end of the regular season. We'll be like, okay, well, they're 10-2 and they're 9. Okay, these are the teams that would make the playoffs. Okay, these are the conference champions, and now let's set up the playoffs.
I think it's going to be a fun year, by the way. I think this is kind of a more wide open-ish kind of year. I don't know if that's your early vibes, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this. If Penn State wins the national championship, Adam has to come on here with a Drew Aller jersey.
That would only be right.
That would be fitting.
That would be fitting with all the, oh my word.
Adam has to wear a Drew Aller jersey if he wins the national title. You know, if Penn
How
State
many teams can win the national championship?
I'm going to say 6.
I'm guessing your 6 are Texas, Georgia, Clemson, Penn State, Ohio State, Alabama, Notre Dame.
Notre Dame.
Okay.
Notre Dame, yeah. And I'm a borderline on Clemson. I'm borderline on Clemson. You know, I mean, the schedule and you know, maybe Klubnik, you know, could possibly be there. I mean, I've already picked Texas to win the national championship, so I think that they're going to win it this year. So they're my pick to win it all. So yeah, I think I have a feeling that this is Sark's, you know, Kirby Smart 21, Ryan Day 2024 kind of year. You know, you know, he's been knocking on the door the last couple years, and this is his kick down the door year. But I do like Penn State. It's just I still don't know if I can trust. And I'm putting out their passing game. I just don't passing game. And by passing game, I mean the collaboration of quarterback and receiver coming together in a big game.
Yeah, it's going to have to be proven to me that that they can be dynamic in the passing game. I think it's going to be they'll be fine. They'll have a good passing game. They've got the receiver coming in, of course, from Syracuse, Trevor Pena. Kyron Hudson is exciting. And picked up the Troy wide receiver, who was very productive there.
Yeah, I think that their running game will be the most dominant in college football. That's as good a backfield combination as we've seen in a while in college football. So, all right, hey, live stream. Bring back live stream too at the start of the season if you can, Mark. I don't know if that's something you've got on your plate.
Bring back what?
The when you do the live stream or the, you know, like, don't you do that the opening
like the 24-hour marathon?
Yeah, the marathon. Yes, my bad.
Somebody brought that up to me yesterday, and I was somewhat half excited and half cringed.
Load up on the double stuffed Oreos, Mark. Let's go.
I'm trying to stay away from those. David,
all right.
I'm going to say not that you should be happy and pleased and honored, but I should be that Leanne has included me in your category.
I'm always more than happy to take a compliment from Leanne. She does a great job.
Absolutely.
All right, my friend. Always a pleasure to talk college football with the great Mark Rogers.
Thank you, David.
Take care of yourself, my friend.
All right, let's keep it rolling. We were looking at 1987, and Miami is the national champion. Franklin Fanatics here. Aaron Frazier, Ralph Wolf, good to see you. Joseph, good to see you as well. E. Gibson and others. Yes, E. Gibson, Miami almost won 4 titles in the 1980s. 83, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, I'd say 6. And then, yeah, it was close to being even more dominant. All right, on to 1986. And this is a layup, but just to make it official, in 1986, of course, was that historic Penn State-Miami Fiesta Bowl matchup, 5 interceptions. And Joe Paterno's defense showed up and showed out, and as a huge underdog, and of course took it 16-14, I believe, was the final score on NBC. So there you go. Penn State, the national champion of 1986. 1985 could have been interesting, could have been controversial. It was not, because, of course, Oklahoma disposed of Penn State by 15 points in the Orange Bowl. So some ties take out a few teams, including Michigan, who beat Nebraska in the Fiesta Bowl to finish number 2, Bo Schembechler's highest ranking in his 21 years at Michigan. And so, again, this is Oklahoma and Penn State at 11-1, and it's a head-to-head situation. Clear-cut national champion. Who did Oklahoma lose to? The aforementioned Miami Hurricanes, who had a chance, more than a chance. You would have thought, considering what they did to Oklahoma earlier in the season, that they would have outright won the national championship had they taken care of business against Tennessee. They were number 2 in the country entering the final poll. There you see them at number 2 in the country with 1 loss. 1985, who'd they lose to? 1985. Anyway, it doesn't matter. They would have won the national championship, but they went to the Sugar Bowl and got drubbed by Tennessee, and that was unexpected as the Vols rose from number 8 to finish number 4. So that's Oklahoma 1985. Clear cut. All right. We've arrived at 1984. I got to tell you, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. 1984. So, if we had legitimate schedules in play and legitimate conferences in play, obviously BYU would be the national champion. They would be. But we know that was not the case. We know that BYU played no one. They played no one better than, I'm not going to look it up right now because I've looked at the schedule a million times. It was Air Force who went 8-4, something like that, 7-4-1. That was BYU's best win. They beat no one close to the top 25. They played the worst Michigan team in Bo Schembechler's entire legacy there. So, Washington, having played a legitimate schedule, and we'll look it up, earned a share of a national championship. It's interesting to note that Washington did not play in the Rose Bowl because they lost head-to-head to USC. And both teams finished with 1 loss in the conference. Actually, USC went 7-1 and Washington 6-1, and USC won the game head-to-head. Therefore, Washington did not technically win the Pac-10. They lost by a half game, which is kind of a stupid scheduling quirk. But here's the Washington schedule in 1984. Won at number 3, Michigan. Now, Michigan obviously was nowhere close to the 3rd best team in the country. They finished 6-6. And then all these other Pac-10 games, and then the loss to USC. So Washington's schedule is nothing exceptional, but let's see if any of these teams broke through to become anything good. UCLA did. So interesting. They did not play UCLA. That would have been a good game to have on the resume because UCLA finished in the top 10 at 9-3. So Washington's best wins: Arizona 7-4, Michigan 6-6. But they did get the shot against Oklahoma, and they won it pretty convincingly. And so we've got a national championship in 1984 for BYU and for Washington. And the other thing to take into consideration here is let's look at Florida. Let's look at Florida. The tough thing here is that Florida did not play in a bowl game. They did lose a game, tie a game, and we'll have to see here. There were services that voted them the national champion. But here's one of these deals where here's the team that played the best against the best schedule. They did lose the opener to Miami. They tied LSU. LSU finished 8-3-1 that year. That LSU team actually tied for the SEC championship. Yes. Well, they went to the SEC championship, or there was no SEC championship game, of course. LSU was the team that represented the SEC because of Florida's probation in the Sugar Bowl. So LSU was a good team. They lost, or they tied LSU. Look at those games on TBS. Remember that? The SEC on TBS. And the loss to Miami. Then after that, beat number 11 Auburn by 3 touchdowns. Beat number 8 Georgia by 27. And then, of course, the Florida State win to finish off the season. And Florida State was a strong team as usual. Georgia finished 7-4-1. Auburn at 9-4. However, having not played, now this situation I separate from other probation situations in which teams went undefeated. This team lost a game, they tied a game, and even though they could have been, probably were, by season's end, the best team in the country, they did not earn a national championship. So leave them off the board, and 1984 belongs to BYU and Washington. All right, let's get to 1983. You are going to be interested to see how I rule this one because I've done it before and I know how this is going to land. So hear me out on this one. So 1983, your national champion in the polls is Miami, of course. They lost the first game of the season. They were a huge underdog against Nebraska. They pulled off the 31-30 win on the failed 2-point play by Nebraska at the end. So Miami earned a national championship, correct? Yes, they did, but other teams did as well. Auburn played a ridiculous schedule and also went 11-1. These bowl games are not playoff games. They're just an additional game against a quality opponent. So how we ever started treating these bowl games like playoff games and that you can't win a national championship because you lost a bowl game makes no sense. They're not playoff games. They are an extra game. Just like it didn't make sense 10 years earlier that they didn't even count the bowl games. But let's look at 1983 Auburn, because my claim for Auburn is going to create a mess. So look at this. Auburn beat number 5, Florida, number 7, Maryland, number 4, Georgia, number 19, Alabama, number 8, Michigan. And Did they not play Florida? Oh, yeah, number 5, Florida. They did not play Tennessee. Oh, they did play Tennessee. And they beat Tennessee, who was not ranked at the time, but finished 9-3. So there's another impressive win. So they basically beat 3, 4, 5, 6 ranked teams. And 1983, Florida State finish ranked. So they beat like 6 or 7 ranked teams. Just a great schedule. And imagine in today's game, Texas at this time, of course, outside the SEC. But let's imagine being an SEC team, and this is before Texas joins the SEC, that in addition to the SEC schedule, you go out and schedule Maryland, who now would be the equivalent of, let's say, scheduling Miami. And then you schedule outside the conference Georgia Tech. And then you also schedule Florida State, who is the equivalent of scheduling maybe somebody like Oregon now. And then you go outside the conference and schedule Texas, who's the equivalent of scheduling Texas. Now, their out-of-conference schedule was Southern Miss, who was no slouch. Southern Miss, Texas, Florida State, Georgia Tech, Maryland. That's their out-of-conference schedule. Southern Miss, Texas, Florida State, Georgia Tech, and Maryland. Auburn earned a national championship. However, if we are going to award Auburn a national championship, okay, small-time republic, Tennessee did finish ranked, correct? Wait a second. Did you see something there? Tennessee finished. No, they didn't finish ranked. That's odd. I guess an investigation for another day. Well, let's do it right now. Tennessee finished 9-3. Beat Maryland, Alabama, LSU. Yeah, it's a mystery. I don't know what to tell you about that. I do not know what to tell you about that. Ole Miss wasn't that bad. They lost to a 6-6 Ole Miss team. Pitt was number 10 to start the season. And actually, 1983, that was the Dan Marino team, correct? No, Marino was gone. So, yeah. Can't explain that one. Yeah, 9-3 football team from the SEC not being ranked. But again, that's not our mission today. Yes, we know Marino was in the 83 draft and started halfway through the season for the Dolphins and lost a playoff game to Seattle. David, I know. Anyway, so we've got, let's get off this Tennessee. They don't matter. Let's get back to the rankings of 1983. And here is the rightful call on this season. The rightful call, for as much as we don't like confusion and chaos, or I kind of do, but I would like one national champion per year, but that's not the way college football was played. Miami did win the national championship, but they are not the only ones who won a national championship. Auburn won a national championship. And if we are awarding Auburn a national championship, Texas won at Auburn by 2 scores. And Texas finished 11-1 and lost 10-9 in the Cotton Bowl on a muffed punt with 4 minutes left against Georgia. Texas should be a national champion, and Nebraska should be a national champion. We've got 5 national champions for 1983. Is that 5? 4. 4 national champions in 1983. 1982. All right, this is a bit messy. Penn State lost to Alabama. Penn State beat Nebraska. SMU undefeated, not the toughest schedule in history, but they beat Pitt. They tied, I believe, an Arkansas team that finished, yes, number 9 in the country. Nebraska 12-1. Penn State beat Georgia. So UCLA tied a game, knocks them out. Let's just check on Nebraska real quick, because I think what we're going to have to do here, I believe. Remember watching this Nebraska-Penn State game on CBS. Yeah, there it is. What a great game. 27-24 in Happy Valley. Then Nebraska was dominant after that. Blew away the Big 8, although Oklahoma gave them a great game, 28-24, and they beat LSU in the Sugar Bowl, only 21-20 in the Orange Bowl. So Nebraska is out based on the head-to-head. And your other national championship team is SMU. Let's look up SMU. I believe I will stay with this selection. Although the schedule is a bit thin. Tulane, UTEP, TCU, North Texas State, Baylor, Houston, are any of those teams any good? We'll look them up here in just a second. I doubt it. Texas, that 1984 Texas, or we're in 1982 now, Texas team. 1982, I believe they lost to North Carolina in the Blue Bonnet Bowl. Texas A&M, Rice, Texas Tech, a typical Southwestern Conference schedule, and really playing nobody outside the conference of note. But tied a top 10 Arkansas team, beat a top 25 Texas team, beat a top 10 Pitt team. Of course, that was Dan Marino. They shut him down 7-3. That Texas team finished at 9-3. So that is by far their best win. Nobody else did anything. Houston was 5-1. That is a weak schedule, but they did not lose a game. If Penn State had not lost by 3 touchdowns to Alabama, then I would award them the undisputed national championship in 1982, but it's got to go to Penn State and to SMU. 1981, I believe, is going to be pretty clear cut. And 1980. So in 1981, there Clemson rose to the top of college football at the Orange Bowl with a win against Nebraska. Nebraska team that won the Big 8 championship, and therefore, despite their 9-2 record, they were playing a team that was vying for the national championship. Texas in 1981 beat Bama in the Cotton Bowl by 2 points, a Bama team that was 9-1. So you had a lot of teams. I recall this situation. I was 12 years old watching all these games, and basically Clemson was not considered as good as Texas or Penn State. Penn State team that put a pretty good thumping on USC and Marcus Allen in the Fiesta Bowl, or Pitt, who played a great game against Georgia. That was a great Sugar Bowl game with Dan Marino and Herschel Walker in 1981, and Pitt beat Georgia. So all these teams were considered to be better, but they all had the one trip up. And so what ended up happening, even though you see SMU at the end of the season got one first place vote, so did Texas, so did Penn State. The Clemson was clearly the national champion, even though they played in a weak ACC, and they got to play a two-loss team in the Orange Bowl. Now, why we could not have matched up, let's say, it's tough to say, because if they would have gone to the Sugar Bowl, they would have played Georgia, and that would have been a rematch. So it would have been 10-1 Georgia, 11-0 Clemson, and they already played. And if Georgia would have won, then they just split two games. But of course, with the mindset at the time, and even now that Georgia won the bowl game, they probably would have won most of the national championship votes, first place votes. So Clemson, I think that college football, from what I recall at the time, was hoping Clemson was going to go down in the Orange Bowl, and that Pitt-Georgia game was going to be the game for the national championship. Although Pitt got stomped by Penn State late in the season. So your national champion, despite all that potential chaos that you see with all those really good teams with one loss, is that Clemson won the national championship despite not the best of schedules. As E. Gibson says, that 1981 Marcus Allen season was amazing. First college back to amass 2,000 yards. Yes, and by a ton. 2340, I believe, is the number. Check me on that one. 2342. Yes, I think you're getting 1990 and 81 confused. Clemson beat Nebraska in the Orange Bowl. Yeah, the Clemson season, not impressive in 1981, but they are the national champions. And then, of course, in 1980, and here's another season where the matchups could have been different. So in 1980, would have loved to have seen Georgia play Pitt. But Notre Dame brought the eyeballs at 9-1-1 to the Sugar Bowl to take on Georgia. And Pitt just got blasted by Penn State. I think it was 48-14. Pitt was the number one team in the country for most of, well, this is 1980. Ohio State was number one preseason. They faltered. Pitt took over, and then they lost to Penn State. And again, a lot of what ifs on different matchups that could have been more decisive. Maybe a Pitt-Georgia matchup for the national championship, or at least in the Sugar Bowl. And then if Pitt would have won that game, we may have had a huge debate among one-loss teams, although there weren't many. But as it stands, Georgia beat Notre Dame 17-10. Herschel Walker was a freshman phenom, and Georgia won the national championship. It's first since 1945 at that point. All right, folks, that about wraps it up for the 1980s. Again, Down in the description section below, you've got a link to Disputed National Champions. Please check it out. You can also just go to Amazon and look up Disputed National Champions. You'll enjoy it. Don't take my word for it. Take it from the 50 or 60 reviews that we've had here to the channel. There's about 25 on Amazon that say it's worth the read. So please pick it up. Disputed National Champions. We'll be back on Monday with more college football talk. And who knows, maybe I'll show up on Sunday and do the 1970s. That is a disaster to be worked through. Appreciate you being here. We'll catch you next time.